More questions. Otherwise, I thought we get a head start on the second part, so we have more time for discussion. What do you think? Yeah. All right. Ta-da! Well, this is our typical Belgian-German diet, and this is what would be better. And this is what will provide plenty of sulfur, phosphate, and chloride, and very little of anything healthy at all. But it may taste good due to our conditioning. Well, why are we going to talk about that nasty chemical thing? Well, all our biochemistry rests on the exchange of protons, which is like pH, and electrons, which is like redox, and it's all regulated by hormones. So this interplay is really the basis of nature, physical nature. The acute acidosis is an occurrence a normal doctor sees very rarely. It's on the intensive care unit. The pH range of the blood is very tightly regulated for good reasons. If it moves out of that, you talk about an acidosis or alkalosis, which in the blood, again, is really rare. And these changes, only a change of 0.3 pH change means a doubling or halving of the proton concentration. So there is actually really a lot happening with a little change of pH in terms of proton exchange and concentration. Everything, the configuration of protons, of enzymes, the reactions, the membrane potentials, it's all pH dependent. And enzymes react very differently with different pH. I will show you some examples that are highly interesting. We are more going to talk about the latent metabolic acidosis we find here in our lifestyle diseases. We have very good buffer systems in the blood to prevent real acidosis. And we have very good elimination routes that prevent it for a long time. That's the kidneys and the lungs. So, still, we see little problems coming, and after the age of 50, 60, bigger problems develop, and we look at them in more detail. By and large, we can say that a disbalance of acid base and minerals is an essential cofactor of all our major diseases. Insulin resistance and diabetes. Diabetes causes acidosis, we know that, but insulin resistance is to a good degree also to a lack of magnesium and potassium in the cell. Chronic fatigue due to chronic stress, depletion of magnesium, which goes always together with potassium. Energy production goes down. Muscle and joint pain, that's quite obvious. No. Inflammation, osteoporosis and muscle weakness. It's a big one at the age. Vascular calcification. We will show how we really, by the process of acidosis, calcify our arteries quite effectively, and up to the process of heart attack and stroke. So, of course, we get heart rhythm disorders and similar things. And don't forget the incredible epidemic of renal failures, kidney disease, which we have never seen before in history of mankind. Like if you talk to any doctor 50 years ago, like dialysis or kidney problems, that was a real rarity. It's now the biggest #1 business Fresenius, dialysis, huge. And wherever Western lifestyle kicks in, you can invest into Fresenius stocks. You will win. Very big problem. And it always develops with our lifestyle and diet. So, we have to go about it a little scientifically. Sorry, chemistry is really hard, but these are the minerals really that are alkaline forming. They neutralize potential acids, the acid forming minerals. So if they combine, it's harmless. If phosphate or chloride or sulfate combines with a proton, you have a strong inorganic acid, a very aggressive acid. And each of these ones, if you have too much of them, causes a lot of problems, which are very well proven in medicine. It's like chloride. You know that for probably 100 years, all patients got sodium chloride infusions. It took them 100 years to understand that they're causing actually a mild acidosis in their patients, and now they're stopping it. Big topic in anesthesia now. Just look how stupid we are. I mean, you do that for 100 years and you don't realize what you do. You give salt infusions that cause an acidosis. Now they realize it's a big problem in anesthesia. So obviously, these elements, especially calcium, should normally stay together with phosphate in your bones. Only smaller amounts are in other places. The other stuff moves around, but has its place. So the misplacement and the disbalance is behind the problem. I think everybody's aware of the function of the minerals. I don't go into details. Obviously, we need all of them. Nothing is bad in itself. It's a problem of balance that we have. What is often forgotten is they're called electrolytes. Acid bases and these minerals, they all are dressed in water. They're dissolved in water. So that's behind all our body chemistry. Here, so the sodium is not like hugging with chloride. No, it's dressed in water, and the chloride is somewhere else, dressed in water also. So that's how it's there. And there's a big thing that sodium and chloride just attracts 50% more water than potassium. So you can understand what happens to a cell where the potassium leaks out and you have more and more sodium chloride in the cell. This is the reason why drinking seawater, you die of thirst. It's due to the osmoregulation changed by the water drawing tendency of sodium chloride. That's why it's so important that each of these molecules stays in the place it's supposed to be. Like sodium chloride, you stay in the blood. Potassium, you are in the cell. And of course, this is one of the reasons why sodium and chloride both increase blood pressure. Now, vessel volume, blood pressure. Harmless, contrary, are the organic acids. These are citrates or lactate or malate. They are weak acids. They are metabolized and they are breathed out. They're turned into carbon dioxide and you just breathe them away. They're no problem. They more have a buffering function. Whilst these strong anorganic acids, they're highly aggressive. The protons dissociate much more strongly, which you can see in the pKs value. Like if you put a piece of bone or meat into, salt soil, into HCl, it will dissolve within like 2-3 hours. If you just put it into milk soil, lactic acid, nothing will happen. There's a big difference in aggression, and they can only be eliminated by the kidneys. And they need to be accumulated, because if they accumulate, you really run into very big problems. That's why also in the body, and before you can pee them out, you need to neutralize them. Otherwise, your ureter would burn to dissolve. So the sodium, and especially the potassium, magnesium, calcium, is needed to neutralize these strong anorganic acids so that they can be excreted or that they're made harmless. If you do not have enough of that, your body will metabolize protein to make ammonia to buffer it. That's what you smell if you stop on the highway and pee, ammonia. And that way you can see there's a lot of ammonia in European toilets. It's not meant to be there. It means that you do not buffer anymore properly. You degrade proteins to buffer the acids. That's the next stage of the problem. And the ammonia is really what does most of the biggest damages. It's a very toxic molecule. So you may have patients who have like an alkaline pH, but are highly acidotic. That's due to ammonia buffering. But they're the ones who lose muscle mass and bone mass and so on, and you can smell it. They sometimes smell of ammonia. Well, and of course, ammonia is the most toxic thing to the kidneys. No wonder that we lose half of our kidney function in our lifetime. Not everybody, but most. Well, these organic acids, they come. I would like to give you a little final example, because that's really very important and it's not much understood. So the strong anorganic acids, you can combine these with a skinhead and a Rottweiler. You know, the holder and the dog are very aggressive and it's a long leash. Better don't get close. And these, that's more like a nice lady with a little fluffy poodle. Like the holder is one part and the acid is the poodle. It's harmless. You won't get damaged really by it, like with a strong acid. So again, it's all about balance. These ones are acid forming and they form the strong acids, and these ones are needed to neutralize them. So everything the body does is to keep the balance, because the more it gets really lost, the more you're close to death. And a real acidosis in the blood leads to death very quickly. Within this, potassium plays the central role in getting out the acids from the cell. That's why there is so much of it in plants. I mean, there's a reason. Potassium is not for no reason there. It has a purpose. It protects the kidneys, not if they're already destroyed. Now, if you have already renal damage, advanced renal damage, that's another story. Then you accumulate. But in healthy persons, potassium is highly protective for the kidneys. That's shown in many studies. That's shown in like Yanomami Indians, like original tribes that have a real original diet. They don't know hypertension. There's no renal disease at all, no cardiovascular problem, and so on. And they are, as I said, very high in potassium, very low in sodium. Again, to make it very simple, here you have the proton plus the chloride, phosphate, and sulfate. That's really very obnoxious. Here you neutralize it. It's okay. And this is really like positively alkaline. That's what we do. If you eat potatoes, if you eat lemons, if you eat fruits and vegetables, or if you take basin pulver, that's what you're getting. And you're getting, by the way, from fruits and vegetables, magnesium or calcium and magnesium on the ratio of 3:2. As we mentioned previously, we have, over the last centuries and millennia, a dramatic change in the ratio of sodium to potassium, but also in the alkali to chloride ratio. You see that if you compare diets like the Yanomami Indians or the Okinawas, they were all very rich in alkali. They were alkali, like negative pral. Pral means potential renal acid load. So if it's plus, it's acidic. If it's minus, it's not. It's the opposite. That's Germany. Belgium is probably quite close. And you see that the Okinawas at that time had no problem with osteoporosis on 500 milligrams of calcium. Now they have it. And we have a huge problem with this, with big amounts of calcium. We don't get the calcium there it should be. And in an acidic diet, you keep excreting the calcium around. We talked about that in the beginning. Number one source of dietary acids is animal protein and salt. Then you have all these convenient products, Coca-Cola with phosphoric acid, energy drinks which are very high in taurine, which is acid forming, and caffeine, which is like also going down that road. It's very low in balancing potassium, and yeah, it has very low content of citrates and lactate and in buffering substances. Another problem we have in our lifestyle is we breathe not deeply. It's a very shallow breathing, and that's why our carbon dioxide is not well excreted. Well, smoking is an obvious one, and lack of exercise also. I think that is clear from what we discussed. So these molecules we talked about, you find in these products a lot and these a little less. And these ones we get too little and should eat more of would be the balancing factor. Very simply put, dilute the acids. That's why you should also drink enough. It's a big difference if you pee out half a liter of urine, which is highly concentrated and already burns the ureter, or if you have diluted it. That's another big problem we have. And best you add in more alkali reserves like our alkaline formula, Chi-Cafe. Go up in the vegetables, herbs, and go down on the animal-based industrial prepared food. Sodium chloride. Usually this is not much talked about in that whole alkali thing. Like if you talk about acid base, it doesn't come up. Like naturopaths used sodium bicarbonate for long times to help to cure people. But indeed, sodium chloride is probably the most toxic acid we are taking in. And all our research points to that. It's there in our daily food, bread, meat products, cheese, fast food. We are far beyond what we should take every day. So sodium chloride, according to thousands of studies, has a catabolic effect. It reduces muscle and bone mass if you take too much of it, of course. It causes a latent acidosis. It's called hypochloremic acidosis. That's why they're stopping with the sodium chloride infusions. It increases blood pressure and cortisol levels. It promotes gastric cancer and autoimmune diseases like multiple sclerosis and others. Very, very, very large body of evidence. Everybody talks about how bad sugar is. There's much more evidence on how bad salt is. But nobody really cares. So, and it's not only the blood pressure we have to reduce it, we also have to reduce it in order to keep our brain and our kidneys healthy. And we see already a slight salt reduction of 2.5 grams of salt reduces heart attack and stroke risk by around 30%. Usually, animal protein doesn't come alone. It comes with a lot of other problematic stuff on top. But animal protein is different from plant protein in that way that it's much higher in sulfur-containing amino acids, which is methionine, especially, and cysteine. Like cow milk has 4 times more methionine than human milk. It's a huge difference. Cow milk is not neutral, it's acidic, and cheese, of course, is highly acidic. So it doesn't really make a big difference if you eat sausage or cheese. Both are not really healthy. And you can see it also on the PRAL table. And it usually comes along with a lot of other things like phosphate and a lot of salt again. So it's the dietary pattern that we need to change. And especially if you're already hypertensive, because that shows that it's starting to get out of control. So if somebody's hypotensive, you don't have to go down with the salt, obviously. Good alternatives are pseudo cereals like amaranth and quinoa. They have a full amino spectrum, including lysine. So the salt really got that toxic because of stress.